So I've been playing Dragon Ball Z: The Legend. When I was but a wee lad, I used to have this thing called a chipped PlayStation. What that meant was that someone did something to take away the region locking. And it also had the nasty little side effect of allowing it to play burnt CD-ROMs. Now, despite this obviously being illegal, I am incredibly grateful for this, as it gave me the opportunity to play games I likely never would have experienced otherwise. Games like Tomba, Point Blank, Destrega, Star Gladiator, and a shit ton of others, some of which never even came out outside of Japan. I actually remember having a Japanese version of Street Fighter EX2, and just assuming that that's how the game was supposed to be. Or also this really odd-looking JRPG made by Tamsoft called Guardians Crusade that I don't think I've ever seen anyone bring up on YouTube before. And just about the same goes for this game. You'd think that with this being a Dragon Ball Z game, it'd be pretty well known. I mean, games like Final Bout and Ultimate 22 are still remembered by tons of people despite being barely playable pieces of shit. But Dragon Ball Z: The Legend and/or Legends barely got any recognition at all. Mostly because of it never being released outside of Japan, apart from the Saturn version, which ended up in France and Spain but nowhere else. And of course, the story follows that of the anime. So, a bunch of fucking alien monkeys happen, and one of them is actually kinda nice, but also kinda baka genki desu ka, blah blah blah. But then, most of the alien monkeys are more or less space Nazis and they want to destroy the world, but then everyone can fly and shoot lasers from their hands, so they all end up fighting, but then they discover that the space Nazis also have a space Hitler in space, so they go to space, but then this evil professor comes along who's made a bunch of robots that recorded all of their data from when they fought the space Nazis, so they're like super strong. But then this giant insect man happens and he eats the robots to become a Bishonen bug boy, and then a morbidly obese Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers come along, and gods happen and time travel and angels and devils and magic, and basically the entire plot could be summed up as Akira Toriyama smashing action figures together and screaming a lot, which makes it a great framework for a video game. Said video game, unlike most DBZ games, isn't technically a 3D fighter or an RPG. If anything, it's more like an airborne martial arts squad-based tug-of-war thing. Basically, the objective here is to shift the balance of power, which is this bar at the bottom of the screen. Blue means you, red means them. And when the bar is filled up on either side, an attack animation will play based on one of the iconic moves from the show. Neat, right? Well, this is the only way to do damage. So, literally, the entire game revolves around this balance of power. One shifts said balance via a rather hype yet simplistic combat system, being that all you really do is just punch and kick with the same button, shoot little shooty pellets, charge your yellow bar, block, fly around, and do super duper hyper teleporty chain combos by fucking around on the D-pad while smashing buttons. So things like quarter circle, circle, up circle, or down circle, that sort of thing. It's a bit unwieldy to pull off at first, nor does the game really explain this at all, but it is quite a lot of fun despite its simplicity. And other than that, you just kind of fly around on a set trajectory as you're essentially stuck on a rail, making fancy cutscenes happen. It works! The game is fast, visceral, and pretty fucking high octane, but sadly also a bit of a one-trick pony. Don't get me wrong, it's fun and it looks pretty cool, but there isn't really a whole lot going on underneath the hood. Something that really would have made this game great was if all characters had their own unique roles. One for staggering the meter quickly, one for maintaining it in its place, or just a more defensive character that could keep it from going to your side. Simple, basic little mechanics like that really would have spiced shit up a lot. And sadly, it doesn't really do that. You see, you can play as and switch to just about every DBZ character at any moment, but all of them play literally exactly the same. They all do the exact same amount of damage, they're all just as fast, and overall, they just don't feel any different to control whatsoever. Even the actual fucking attacks that happens when the balance flips all do the exact same amount of damage. Whether if it's a measly Destructo Disc or a fucking earth-shattering Spirit Bomb, it all takes away the same little chunk of green bar from enemy. And what certainly doesn't help here is the fact that the balance of power is ironically quite unbalanced. Like I said, everyone fights the same and does the same amount of damage. So regardless of who we're dealing with here, a large group of enemies will always be harder to fight than smaller groups of enemies. So like, the fucking Ginyu Force were much stronger than Boo just because he was on his own and I had two dudes. Shit's fucking strange, man. Something else that also struck me as a bit odd about the balance system is that as the entire group plays into this, of course, it is very reliant on AI. Sometimes it just doesn't feel like you're even contributing all that much during bigger battles, or that the AI is only holding you back because they suck. I guess that this is mostly fine either way, nothing really too bad, but what I'm trying to get at here is that the balance of balance is at its best during one-on-one battles. They certainly won't look as cool as the chaos that is the much grander fights, and there's only about one or two of them in the entire game as well, but these one-on-one big dick fuckfests are butt-clenchingly tense as literally every single punch matters from both sides. The Vegito vs. Boo fight especially is fucking epic as a result, because of the constant tug of war, pulling the bar to either side, really making the payoff of seeing that fucking cutscene feel pretty goddamn rewarding. You'd think that a game like this would have been built more around the group fights, considering that that's kind of its thing, but I honestly don't feel that it is. Especially when you take into consideration that it's exactly during these bigger fights that shit does get a wee bit repetitive. What I mean is that while the attack cutscene thingies do look pretty fucking cool, there are only one or two of them per character, so you'll be seeing the same certain attacks over and over, really making me wish that there was a way to skip these at least after having seen one of them once. But alas, it was not to be. I fucking loved this game as a kid. Why? Well, when you're used to crap like Dragon Ball Z Ultimate 22, or very badly controlling shit like Final Bout, and you see this, fully emulating the show with all of its speed, with everyone fighting at once, even though that never actually happens, as people just stand on the sidelines gasping whilst the Saiyans have at it, but fuck you, I'm having a moment here. With the seasick camera and the wide open plains, it really kinda blew my mind all over my keyboard. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this game is awesome, but only on a very superficial level. If it set out to emulate the fighting seen in the show as best as it possibly could have at the time, then they certainly succeeded. Just kind of a shame that they sacrificed all semblance of depth to be able to do this. Like, every battle starts off feeling pretty cool. New sets of characters, new stage, hype music, and a handful of cutscene attacks. But once I found out that Super Saiyan Trunks does the exact same shit as normal Trunks, or that Majin Vegeta does the same Big Bang Attack animation that he does right at the start of the game, I definitely had a bit of the old boredom and or get on with it syndrome setting in here and there. Not that the game necessarily has to be deep in order for it to be good, but a bit more variety would have been nice. Still though, I'd say it's definitely worth checking out if you're an avid Dragon Ball Z fan. Shit does look pretty cool, and considering that there's no other game like it just yet, it also has novelty status. And when compared to the before-mentioned Final Bout and Ultimate 22, it is a fucking masterpiece. Though, I can see it getting boring rather quickly for anyone not interested in Dragon Ball Z to begin with, despite the balance of power being a very cool idea on its own. In fact, I'm honestly kind of bummed out that this concept wasn't explored any further. You know, like add some more characters, some dynamic environments, actual individual buttons for punching and kicking, and maybe some what-if scenarios. It could be pretty cool. This, however, doesn't stray very far from the Framework Stadium, despite still being fun enough as far as I'm concerned. And also, back when this game came out, there wasn't anything like it at all. The Budokai games were still years away, and this really was the only game that contained the entire Dragon Ball Z experience into a single package. Even if that was an Namekian package. You know, 'cause they don't have no dicks. No dicks. No dicks. Joke.